But, I mean, generally, our opinion, I mean, when I say our, I'm not putting myself with the ulama, trust me. I mean, our opinion for people of Ahl Sunnah and Jama'ah, and the dominant configuration of that, because there are minority opinions within the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but the dominant opinion, the opinion that I was taught, the opinion of my teachers, is that, Tawassul is permitted, to ask the Prophet ﷺ for intercession is permitted, things like that. That's what I was taught, and that's what I believe, and that's I think that is the strongest opinion. Tawassulu bijahi fa inna jahi 'inda Allahi 'azim. It's a weak hadith, but it's related. I mean, it's not fabricated hadith. And the hadith of Uthman ibn Hunayf is the strongest one, because that's a sahih hadith without any debate. And Ibn Taymiyyah's interpretation of it goes against all the other ulama. So, with all due respect to Ibn Taymiyyah, the ulama just rejected that rejection of that hadith. So, the hadith of Uthman ibn Hunayf is a sound hadith, and the Prophet taught him how to make the dua, tashri'an. He could have made the shafa'ah right there, because he asked him to intercede for me. But he told him, go do wudu. When you finish your wudu, pray the rakats, and then pray this prayer. Allahumma inni as'aluka bi nabiyyika Muhammad. I ask you through your Prophet Muhammad. And then he said, say, Ya Muhammad. And then he said to say that in his dua, Ya Muhammad, inni atashafa'u ilayka. Abika ila Rabbi, I'm asking your shafa'ah, your intercession to my Lord. Allahumma shafi'u fiyya wa shafi'ni fi nafsi. Oh Allah, make him my intercessor with you, and make me an intercessor also. In other words, make me worthy of interceding for others. And that dua is sound dua. It's pretty clear. Well, it's a weak opinion, the other opinion. That's a 7th century innovation. Before the 7th century, nobody said that. But to intercede with the Prophet's not acceptable. That's a 7th century opinion. Before that, none of the Salaf said that. None of them. Nobody can find any word. And to ask them to prove that, show some opinion before Ibn Taymiyyah that counters that. There's none. And that's the opinion of Imam al-Bayhaqi, all these great ulama. I mean, they all have it in their books. And so it's just very strange, but it's become a dominant opinion because of the books and all the money that has enabled the madhab to spread like that. But it's not the dominant opinion of the scholars of Islam by any standard. So it's a khilaf. They don't accept our khilaf, we accept their khilaf. What can I say? If you don't want to do it, that's fine. It's jaiz, it's not wajib. It's just permissive. When I asked Murabt al-Hajj, my own teacher, about it, he said jaiz. You want to do it? Fine. You don't want to do it? Fine. Just don't tell people you can't do it if they want to do it. Don't tell people you can't do it because you don't have any proof. And the proofs that they use have been refuted very profoundly by the scholars. I mean, it's not وَمَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى, saying that they used to call on stones, and those stones, they did it to draw near to Allah. And then they said, نَعْبُدُهُمْ. Who worships the Prophet? I don't worship the Prophet. And to say that, well, you're asking him to ask God. Well, I ask Sidi Abdul Hadi to ask God. Abdul Hadi, make dua for me, please. Jazakallah khairan. He just made dua. What, is that shirk? So you say, well, the Prophet's dead. Not in my belief. That's your belief, that's fine. In my belief, he's hayyun fi qabrihi. In my belief, if I say Assalamu alaikum in the Sahih Hadith, an angel tells him, Hamza Yusuf just said, Salaam alaikum ya Rasulullah, and he says to me, Hamza Yusuf, wa alaikum as-salam. What is wa alaikum as-salam if it's not dua? It's a dua, peace be upon you. So we know the Prophet makes dua for us. So if I want to ask him to make dua for me, that's fine. Don't tell me it's shirk. I don't worship the Prophet. I can take penicillin. I don't have to just sit and die of some infectious disease because it's shirk, brother. God's the Shafi. Just go straight to God. Why are you going to the penicillin? Because God put means in the world to get His blessing. Healing's a blessing. But if He made penicillin a means to that blessing, so be it. And if He made the Prophet ﷺ a means to that blessing, alhamdulillah. Yeah, but those are actions. Those are things. People forget that tawassul is a fiqh question. It's not an aqidah question. It's not a belief, it's an action. That's why it's dealt with in Hajj. It's dealt with in Bab al-Hajj. It's not dealt with in the books of aqidah. It's actually dealt with in the books of fiqh. It's just some people have turned it into an aqidah question. But it's not. It's a question of action. It's a question of action. Is that clear?
How is intercession different to that of the pagans and those who use the Prophet ﷺ and the pious, i.e. Tawassul? It's actually very different. These people are actually directly calling on to these unseen gods that they've developed and saying that they're intermediaries to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that Allah is out of the picture. Tawassul is when you're calling on to Allah, but just saying that I would like to invoke the position that this particular Shaykh or pious person has in your sight. Just taking his name so that because you love him so much, and because he's such a muttaqi and such a pious individual, I'm nothing, I'm just using his name in the middle so that just as you would be more merciful on him, you'd have your mercy on me as well. So we're calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to the individual. So tawassul is definitely very, very different. When you come to Ishtighatha, that becomes a bit more problematic. You've got group who will say that tawassul and Ishtighatha completely out of the question, haram, except in certain very specific conditions, like with the Prophet ﷺ when he's alive. And they've got a few other conditions. There's another group who believe that everything and anything is permissible. That's also problematic. The thing with Ishtighatha is to actually call out to somebody other than Allah who's not present. If somebody is present and you're calling out to them to help you, that's a whole different thing. When somebody is not present, you're calling out to someone, whether they're dead or alive, it doesn't really matter. That has the form of shirk. Because when I'm saying, Ya Abdul Qadir, madad. Oh Abdul Qadir, assist me. Which means Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, who's left this world, who's in his grave in Baghdad. Now again, this doesn't matter whether the person is alive or dead. It doesn't really matter. But we're just using the example of Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. The reason why this is a bit problematic, because an onlooker, number one, will look at this and say, why isn't this person calling out to Allah? Why is he calling to somebody who's not present? Kind of insinuates that the person is maybe present and listening. So, regardless of what the person saying this, regardless of what their aqidah is, definitely insinuates this idea of shirk to others. Now, in terms of the person who's saying it, somehow if they manage to direct this to Allah, what they intend by this is that I'm actually speaking to Allah, but I'm just saying it in this way. We can't call that shirk or anything, because the aqidah is correct inside. But still, I think this is undesirable for the public, because this has this connotation. You will see these statements in the poems and writings of some ulama where they'll say, Ya Rasulullah. Their intention, again, is not that they're calling directly onto the Prophet ﷺ. They're calling onto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they're just saying this out of love. It's just this statement in absentia, just like in the tashahhud we say, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a narrative, it's a statement. So that's istighatha. Istighatha is best avoided. But if somebody has done it, for example, in a poem or something like that, then we're not going to put a label on them immediately. You have to take it in context and see what they're talking about. Unfortunately, a lot of common people, I'm not talking about great scholars, but I'm talking about a lot of common people, it becomes part of their language to such a degree that Allah's name is completely replaced. So anything that happens, an accident takes place, or something bad happens, immediately said, Ya Abdul Qadir Madad. Ya Abdul Qadir. So instead of saying Ya Allah, they'll say Ya Abdul Qadir. So a lot of the common people, unfortunately, may have a very misconstrued aqidah in this regard. And may actually even start believing that I'm actually calling out to Abdul Qadir Jilani. And that's where this problem is. So understand it carefully. And Allah knows best.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Tawassul is generally understood as when you say, for example, "O God, grant me this by the right of the Prophet, or by the right of a great saint, or another prophet," or also you can do tawassul by the names of God and other things. But it's calling upon God with a special reference to someone that he loves as a saint or a prophet, or something that he loves. One of his attributes, I ask you by your mercy, his names. And this was not regarded to be part of theology at all, but part of law. Sunnis and Shia, and I don't know very much about the Khawarij, who are the other major division, had consensus about the fact that this was legitimate and that it's part of the Sunnah. This was common practice throughout Islamic civilization. It is not a violation of Tawheed. It does not imply or involve ascribing divinity to other than God. It is not based on any belief that the Prophet has divine control. It's rather a way of intermediation with God by what he loves and his special relationship with his prophets and with his saints and so forth. In the 14th century of the Common Era, Ibn Taymiyyah came out against Tawassul and against Ishtighatha. Ibn Qayyim also took the same position. No doubt the reason for that was because of many of the abuses that were being done in popular Islam. And that's the reason why it's always important that moderation and knowledge be maintained at all times. If you go to the Muslim world, and I know that most all of you know this and have even seen this, the things that the common people do often out of ignorance are outlandish, and the cult of peers and special relationships with sheikhs that are often charlatans are a shame and make them a laughingstock to their own people and to others as well. But you don't throw out the baby with the bath. And so this is an issue which was not treated in theology. I would assume that today in any theological statement of Islam it probably has to be brought in because of the fact that Ibn Taymiyyah took a position against it. He was regarded by his contemporaries to have gone against consensus in that. And I have great respect for Ibn Taymiyyah. He retracted his position on Tawassul. Ibn Ata'illah, the great Maliki faqih, the great Maliki jurist and Sufi, spoke with Ibn Taymiyyah in a famous dialogue. Ibn Taymiyyah retracted his position on intermediation. He didn't retract his position on Ishtighatha. That's his opinion. But these should not be matters of division. They should never be a basis by which one Muslim points to another and calls him a polytheist. And we pray that Allah give us the honest understanding of our religion, that He remove all the shubuhat, all of the doubtful matters, and that He put us on the clear way. Ameen.